first, let me give you a little bit of background on who I am. I'm Dr. Nick Begich. I'm an author and lecturer. I have a doctorate in traditional and complementary medicines. I was born and raised and spent most of my life here in Alaska. I also work as the executive director for the Lay Institute on Technologies based in Dallas, Texas. Its main mission is to educate the public on the impacts and repercussions of technology so that we can be prepared in this century. The first topic today that we want to cover is updates on the HAARP story, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which many people are familiar with. This project initially was a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy to build large radio transmitters here in Alaska. These transmitters would occupy a huge area. Initially it was 48 antennae in the array. These are antennas that are 72 feet tall, have a cross dipole, so across the top you'll see this type of a shape. These are about 70 feet across. There's 48 in the array. Eventually, at the end of this coming summer of 2005, we'll be seeing 180 antennae in the array, and eventually the full array will be 360 antennae. The idea between these radio frequency generators is to focus radio frequency energy in a much different way than most of us think about radio frequency energy coming off of an antenna, if we think of it at all. But when you think about it, when you go back to the original companies that started this project, it was a company called Arco Power Technologies, Inc., which was a subsidiary of Atlantic Richfield, one of the largest oil and gas companies at that time operating in Alaska. They sold that subsidiary to E-Systems, which is a military contractor, a large military contractor based in Washington, D.C., who later sold it to Raytheon, who later sold it to British Aerospace, which now controls that technology. But in the course of that, one of the things that they had talked about was what's called earth-penetrating tomography. This is the idea of sending a signal up into the ionosphere, oscillating that signal off the ionosphere, which actually causes that layer 30 miles above the Earth's surface to begin to vibrate in harmony with the signal on the ground, causing it to act as a giant broadcast antenna, sending that signal back down to the Earth, and it passes through the Earth and sea in the form of an ELF, an extremely low frequency signal, a very long wavelength that efficiently passes through the Earth, and that can be used for a number of things, including earth-penetrating tomography, the idea of looking into the Earth, or in plain language, it would be like, by comparison, X-raying the Earth, or looking into the Earth for underground mineral layers, underground shelters, nuclear facilities, and the like. Brooks' concern was much broader in terms of what could be triggered with earth-penetrating tomography. And one of the things that he noted was the effect of resonance, this idea of sending energy in, it harmonizes in a way that causes the energy actually to be more than the sum of the total. You know, it's like the old World War I stories where the armies were marching across wooden bridges in Europe, and some hours after they had marched across, the bridges would just collapse. And it was the rhythmic beat of the march across that bridge that set up essentially a vibration that eventually collapsed the entire structure. This idea of resonance, when applied to earth-penetrating tomography at very high power levels, causes concern for many scientists, including Brooks Agnew, because what he believes is possible is to trigger events within the Earth, geophysical events, earthquake, volcanic eruptions, the kinds of things that may already be on the edge of discharge, and with the right resonant energies added into the system, cause them to overload and actually fracture. In fact, it was William Cohen that actually made the statement regarding weapons of mass destruction and the idea of generating earthquakes artificially. Weapons of mass destruction and the idea of generating earthquakes artificially. Weapons of mass destruction and the idea of generating earthquakes artificially.
The blueprint for HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
What does HAARP do? HAARP is a large antenna where we beam radio frequency energy up into the upper atmosphere, and we create on a small scale what the sun normally does.
The assignment came that the Navy and the Air Force were to manage the program.
There were some other ideas, both to possibly modify weather.
In 1983, I did radio tomography with 30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HAARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. We might get a sound back like, and we say that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 2 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake. Earthquake, 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 earthquake.
It's being used to describe the earthquake's impact. Unimaginable. Mr. President, I know you've been to Haiti a couple of times already as the UN Special Envoy. Will you be going back?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd be back there tonight if I think I'm doing more good here staying on the phone trying to help solve problems. We basically need now food, water, shelter, and medical supplies. We identified some places for large numbers of people to seek shelter today, but if anyone wants to help now, not 2 weeks from now, a month from now, we'll need lots of rebuilding help, lots of volunteer help, but now, unless you're in a search and rescue team or a medical team, the best thing you can do is give money for food, water, shelter, and first aid supplies. Those are the things we need. And we set up a website for the UN at clintonfoundation.org/Haiti earthquake. You can text Haiti at 2022. Send a text message. $10 will be forwarded to it. We'll move that money in a hurry. But everybody, this is one of those things where $5 can make a difference.
24 hours, then this could become a very different situation indeed. We have seen before the capacity that Haiti has for violence in the 2004 coup, in the 2008 food riots, and it could slip towards that situation again, becoming survival of the fittest. The American troops are arriving. They may be needed to keep order on the streets as well as run the operations here at the airport. I believe that we probably have 24 hours in which to get those supplies to the people who so desperately need them. If it slips to 48 hours, I would not want to be the person standing in the back of one of those trucks handing out the food supplies or handing out the water bottles. That could become a very, very dangerous situation indeed. There is no doubt that at this hour we are facing a race against time to help the desperate people of Port-au-Prince.
When the fox hears the rabbit scream, he comes a-running, but not to help.